We are live on another episode of The 10, Bet River Sports Network's Big Ten betting show. I'm your host, Greg Waddell, joined as always by Doug Kezirian. Week 7 is here. We learned quite a bit in Week 6, some shocking results, including Penn State's loss at UCLA. We've got some great games to look forward to, though, this week. Indiana making the trek west to take on Oregon. Ohio State in Champaign against Illinois. Brett Bielema's squad with another statement game opportunity to right the ship and keep their playoff hopes alive. That and plenty more coming up later in the show. But first, let me remind you, we have one of the best promotions available for you right now. It is our college football squares. Players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or NCAA football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly squares game. Winning standard squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See the app and the website for more details. Let's start today's show with the aforementioned Penn State Nittany Lions this week. They will play host to Northwestern, 22-point favorites. However, I can't make sense of what this Penn State team is anymore. After back-to-back losses, a free fall is underway. Doug, can you please help me sort through James Franklin's team?
Oh, next question. I don't know what to make of this. I do think this is a different stretch for Penn State, and it's not just one time, the lone time, because Franklin's done a good job, all things considered. He's been terrible against the top 10 teams, but he's handled the business against the inferior competition. But this doesn't feel right. This kind of does, in fact, feel like the beginning of the end for Franklin in Happy Valley. Or there just needs to be an attitude adjustment amongst the Nittany Lions fan base. Do they really think it's Paterno days where they can compete for national championships? Or this is just where the bar is and the ceiling is, and maybe they sneak through and do pull off an upset like the block field goal against Ohio State about a decade ago? Because this was a team that really did not show up, which I think is a reflection of coaching, and didn't make adjustments. The UCLA was looking like a completely different team, like a ranked team, and Penn State couldn't stop them. And it was so bad that it actually makes me reconsider and reevaluate Oregon moving forward and just the transitive property, so to speak. Like, are we sure Penn State was as good as we want to say? Now they went and got the coordinators coming into the season, very different outlook than we thought would be the case, but Franklin still botches things. Teams are unprepared. UCLA obviously was in a much different situation with a new coach, new coordinator. They were going to throw the kitchen sink. So I understood why Penn State might have been flat, but I'm reevaluating everything with the Nittany Lions. I don't know what to think, and I worry that this season can go off the rails, much like maybe Texas. Right? They're both unranked. They were both top 10 last week, and who's to say these preseason expectations were accurate at all things considered?
Yeah, it's an interesting moment for Penn State football, obviously, when it's the quote unquote year. Everybody comes back. Drew Aller returns. Both the running backs opt for one more year together, passing up NFL futures or just going somewhere where they're not in a share. When you look up and you're 3-2, 0-2 in the Big Ten, it's going to show you what you're made of. And there's a team almost 20 years ago now that this reminds me of, but that Michigan football team years and years ago that lost to Appalachian State when they had Chad Henne and Mike Hart and everyone was back from a postseason top 5 finish the year before. And that season just went nowhere and it went awry early. And you still look up, there's 7 games left to play. I don't know where this is headed. You look at Penn State's schedule, obviously Northwestern at home now is a must win and you need style points, but it'd be hard not to look ahead. They go to Kinnick Stadium at Iowa, then they have at Ohio State and Indiana in their next 3 games after this. So what should have been a get-right game against UCLA was obviously a disaster. You could convince me either side here as we look forward to this Northwestern game. Penn State favored by just 22. I think a week ago it would have been Penn State by 28. So if you want to buy the dip here, I think there could be a little bit of an angle there. I'm just not sure I want to. Doug, any thoughts quickly on the Northwestern matchup here as they open as 22-point favorites?
Found the Nittany Lions in nearly every game. Keep thinking Franklin's going to play bully ball with some of these huge spreads, and they have yet to cover a single game all year. I would side with Penn State. I do think the hangover spot was very pronounced. It was understandable, playing West, all that stuff. This is a different ask. And by the way, the Wildcats come in having won back-to-back games as a favorite. You wonder what's in the gas tank right now. They looked pretty feeble against Oregon at home. It was a sleepy spot for the Ducks, early kick. I think the Nittany Lions can get back on track. They just look so unprepared against Nico. I think they'll be a little bit more buttoned up this week in practice. I think it's a clean slate. I think we're going to see a good performance, all things considered. I just don't know if they're going to, it's going to be right around the number, but it's Penn State or pass for me.
Let's get Troy Macker in here. Troy, any early week data for us on how this game is being bet?
Yeah, right now is anyone would expect, all the money and tickets are on Penn State to win. There's no backing of another surprise upset. 63% of the money is on Northwestern to cover, with 64% of the tickets on Penn State to cover. And it's super fascinating because, as you mentioned, Penn State has yet to cover this year. Only one of three teams in college football to have failed to cover in a single game this year. So my early thought would be, especially having some experience backing Penn State and coming up a loser on the spread, you fade Penn State. But then, okay, let's take a look at Northwestern. Northwestern has failed to cover the spread in 4 of its last 6 games as a road underdog. And this number is down at 22 points in favor of Penn State. But as Greg mentioned, this probably would be 28-29 if not for that horrific loss. The other one that's really interesting is the over. 78% of the money, 80% of the tickets. It's actually we've taken a fair amount of money on the over as it relates or compares to other overs across the board. And 4 of Penn State's last 5 games have gone over the total points lines. And each of Penn State's last 6 games against conference opponents have gone over the points lines. 47.5 is the number. Northwestern's probably not going to give you more than 14 points. That seems about where they're scoring against teams not named UL Monroe. So it's going to be up to Penn State to do heavy lifting. Are they going to come out hot? You would hope they do. We've seen them score lots of points in the second half. But if they're up big, are they going to continue to put their foot on the necks of Northwestern, or are they going to take their foot off the brakes? We haven't seen them put their foot on someone's neck yet. And after what we saw out west, are we that confident that they're able to do so? So it's very interesting. These two numbers for are kind of right down the middle for a game that could go either way, because we just don't know, because Penn State is grossly untrustworthy, something I've been saying all year.
All right. Thank you, Troy. That's an interesting spot on both sides. We'll continue to
little disappointed no one's on the money line for Northwestern. A little disappointed.
Oh, yeah, Doug?
I'm not, but I'm just saying. You'd think someone would take a flyer after seeing what they've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate that angle, to be honest with you. Almost 9-1 if you are taking a flyer on Northwestern. So, like I said, we will continue to deliberate Northwestern and Penn State. We'll have more for you on the second episode of the show later this week. For now, let's turn to the other side of that shocking Penn State upset last week. UCLA got the victory. The Bruins will try to follow up an incredible win with a second incredible win on the road in East Lansing against a Michigan State team somewhat in free fall right now. The Spartans favored by 9, but they've lost back-to-back Big Ten games by double digits. Our total's at 55.5 here. Aiden Childs, the Michigan State quarterback, a little bit banged up at the end of the Nebraska game. He was on his back repeatedly as that Michigan State offensive line did nothing to protect him. Doug, what are we looking at here?
I mean, do we think that all of a sudden little Neuheisel's the answer and the whisperer for this offense? I mean, Nico couldn't run anywhere, and he's running all over. He looked like Vince Young to decide the Rose Bowl back in the day against USC, the way he was running in Pasadena. I would think the spot is terrible for the Bruins, right? You have a early kickoff, big hangover spot. This has all the makings of the team that we saw early in the season that was constantly unprepared, and Michigan State wanting to get things back on track and a feel-good spot. But the Spartans' defense is ranked really poorly in terms of efficiency. The offense is nothing that's that powerful. I know we've talked about Maryland, but I just wish UCLA was going to Maryland and it was like the line was 12 or 13. I would much rather a situation like that because I could bank on the Terps dropping like a 50 burger here. Now, I just don't know what I'm going to get out of Sparty. You mentioned the quarterback situation. They're leaky defensively. Maybe UCLA's got some things figured out, and you wipe the slate clean with a new coordinator and new coaching staff. So it gives them like a new lease on life. Maybe they're thinking, hey, we can go bowling this year. You never know. Highly doubtful, but this is a game that's winnable. I just think the early kick and all that, it's Sparty or pass. Maybe it's even Sparty first half or pass. But if Sparty covers first half, they should pull away here. So I think they're better coached. I would lay it with Michigan State if I had to play the game like in a pick'em league or something like that.
Yeah, it's a 9 a.m. body clock game for the Bruins, as you allude to here. Big travel spot, obviously an emotional hangover spot. All things spot scream that Michigan State should be playable here. You just have to make a decision on what you think this Michigan State team is. Do you view them as a middle of the pack Big Ten opponent? If so, I would think almost any middle tier Big Ten team, given this spot, should be able to handle UCLA by 2 scores. I just have a sneaky suspicion that this Michigan State team is worse than that. I mean, I keep coming back to that non-conference win over Boston College. If a 2-point conversion goes the other way, they lose that game. And we're looking at Jonathan Smith's team at 2-3 overall, saying he's getting fired at the end of this season. I think that really is on the table here. Again, the injury situation, it's not like Childs is going to be out, but he was not close to 100% late in the second half of that game in Lincoln last week. And give him credit for trying to play through it. He's running for his life every time he takes a snap. The offensive tackle situation at Michigan State is just terrible right now. You could talk me into the over on this game. It's a pretty high line at 55.5, but if you do buy Neuheisel as a legitimate upgrade here, calling plays, then you would think UCLA can find some success. Nico's a talented kid, as we saw last week. But for now, it's a stay away from me just because I don't trust the Michigan State Spartans to the level I need to lay 9 points here. Let's go to the Spartans' in-state rival here. Michigan's going out west to take on USC this week, a battle of 2 big-time brands, and this should be a really entertaining football game. USC favored by 2.5. Michigan on the money line is plus 108. Our total is 57.5. Any early thoughts, Doug?
I think USC is the only side you can play in this game. Really favorable situation. A, they're at home. B, off a bye. Right time of kick. And I don't think the Wolverines can exploit the Trojans defense like teams have in recent weeks, specifically Illinois. USC's had trouble going on the road. There's no secret about that. They even struggled a little bit in Purdue, but they've been pretty solid at home. And I'm not sure Michigan is that dynamic offensively. I do think the coaching edge is with Lincoln Riley and the Trojans. I know USC also has to go to South Bend next week, but they're not good enough to look past a blue blood like this coming in. I like Michigan. I like Underwood. I like about him, but I just think USC, this number's too short. This number, I made 4.5.
Yeah, I lean with you here early in the week. I think I'm going to play the Trojans. Anything under a field goal seems a very favorable number here. This Michigan team, we know they're good defensively. I was on the under against Wisconsin. I thought it was a really uninspired Michigan performance in that game off of a bye. They really didn't show me anything creatively. Kind of got into we're trying to run the score up territory at the end of the game rather than kneeling it out. I found that interesting. Ultimately, it didn't happen. They didn't punch it into the end zone. But I just get weird vibes from this Michigan team. And against quality opponents this year, I think they haven't been up to snuff. I mean, I think back to that Oklahoma game where they were playing from behind pretty much from the entire jump. They certainly have not had the offensive firepower to go win a game where they need to outscore a talented opponent. USC, we know you're going to have to score with the Trojans, especially at home. They're going to get into the 30s. I don't think Bryce Underwood on the road, with the lack of really any sort of marquee targets on that team through the air, I don't trust how they keep up. So give me the Trojans early here too. Let's go back to Troy. Troy, any notes you can share with us on Michigan USC?
Yeah, over-unders at 57.5. It's a pretty big number. 97% of the money and 80% of the tickets are on the over. Now, we know people love betting the overs. Why watch a game and bet on there to not be points? Totally get that. 7 of USC's last 9 home games have gone over the total points line, and each of USC's last 9 games as a favorite against a ranked team have gone over the total points line. So those all go in that direction. However, only one of Michigan's games this season have gone over 57 points, and that was a blowout against Central Michigan that they won 63-3. We had 34 points last week in the Wisconsin game, 47 in the Nebraska game, 37 in the Oklahoma game, 51 in the New Mexico game. So this team, while they are a little bit dynamic in how they're able to find the end zone, they're not prolific in finding the end zone. And they're going on the road. How many points do we think they're going to put up? And if we think USC is going to win, are they going to score in the 30s? I don't see this game being played in the 30s. I see this game being played in the 20s for each team. So even though all the trends suggest the overs and the public is on the overs, this one, for me, I see the number is a little too big to be on the over. So I would be on the under here just because, teams traveling west, that can be a hiccup, slow starts, things like that. But this should be, in a slate of really good Big Ten games, this is a really good, really, really good game. It's just overshadowed by the fact that we have two elite matchups.
Yep, 100%, Troy. All right, thank you. You mentioned there are two elite matchups. Let's get to one of them. It's Ohio State at Illinois. Now, Illinois got embarrassed in their first marquee opportunity against Kurt Cignetti's squad earlier this year. Ryan Day has addressed that at the podium this week and said, hey, I'm not even showing my team film from that game. It's a data point, nothing more. Ohio State has been very good, but there's still something I'm waiting to see from this Buckeyes team. And we've alluded to it on previous episodes of this show. This could be an opportunity for them to announce themselves as the team to beat in this conference still. 14.5-point road favorites against a Brett Bielema squad that, Doug, you mentioned a week ago, you had circled this spot for the Illini. How are you feeling about it now that you see the number?
I hope you didn't remember, because remember I said I was going to martingale against this Ohio State team one way or another last week against Minnesota. You're right. Something that feels a little off with Illinois and feels a little off with Ohio State. I just think Ohio State's still the big brother in the room. The Illini showed me something, bouncing back from the beatdown by Indiana and played and then beat USC kind of handily, all things considered. A couple fluky turnovers inside the 5. I just worry that Illinois is going to be down 7-0, and I'm going to be like, what the heck did I take them? But that's the only way I could play this game. Ohio State's been getting better, I think. I like Sand playing within himself, making some big throws down the middle. Obviously got stud wide receiver. To be honest, the number feels right. I would bet over if I had to, but I just think this Illinois defense got some major holes. And I just think I can't take the 14.5 because of that defense. It's just too weak right now.
I think the way that I'm going to play this game is going to be on the total, and I think you got there, Doug. I think it's the over for me here. Now, Ohio State's defense has held all of their opponents this year under 10 points. That's the scary part of playing a total at 50.5. And it's not like they've played nobody. Remember, they held Texas to 7 in the shoe to open the year. Washington's a team that can pour a lot of points on you. 6 points against Ohio State. That was a home game for Washington. And it's kind of a similar spot here to me. Illinois at home with their season on the line, I think you've got to expect their best. The number being 14.5 to me screams that Vegas would love people to back Illinois here. I mean, as someone who likes betting on this Illinois team, that's a circle that number like something feels off. It feels too easy to take 2 touchdowns if you believe Illinois is a good football team. And you're right. You just know Ohio State's probably going to score their first drive of the game, and you're going to feel super uneasy about this. So for me, I like the over. I think Illinois' defense has really taken a step backward since that Indiana game. Teams have been able to exploit this team through the air with the secondary injuries. Looking at the last 3 games in the Big Ten, 70 points combined in Illinois Purdue last week, 66 in Illinois USC. They've been going way over these low 50 totals, and I just think Ohio State probably gets to 40 in this game. Question will be, can Illinois keep up or not? I'm going to think they do enough to cash the over, but we shall see. Let's go to the final marquee game here, and man, it's different. Obviously, the big blue blood powerhouse program is the home team here. But I find myself in this interesting spot comparing Ohio State, Illinois, and Indiana, Oregon this week, where the upstart programs, kind of the cute, sneaky, can they get into the playoff teams, are touchdown or more underdogs against the powerhouses. I want to talk myself in to Curt Cignetti in Indiana here at 7.5, but much like that Ohio State-Illinois game we just talked about, Doug, if Oregon scores right off the bat here, I could see this going south the way Indiana's biggest games did last year. So the Ducks by 7.5 is the number. The total is 55. Help me sort through this one, please.
I'm a little uneasy how much I like Indiana in this game. I think they're going to run all over them. I think I think what people are overlooking with Zignetti and everything is how good the rushing attack is and how good the receivers are for the Hoosiers. This team's got a lot of weapons. They look like a real top 10 team when they take the field. This is not the little engine that could trying to hang with the big boys. They look more well coached than a lot of teams that are in terms of like these elite programs, right? It's a much more parity right now in college football. You can say the NIL, the elite programs don't have the depth anymore. I like Oregon. I think Dan Lanning's an excellent coach, but what big games has he been winning, right? The win at Penn State was great. Like obviously, but how good is Penn State now? We're not sure yet, right? There's a potential that they're not that great. The game against Ohio State last year, like great win, but you know, Will Howard's tripping over his own feet, screwing that clock management up. That could have very easily gone the other way. They lose to Penix in Washington by 3 the year they had Bo Nix. So we're just assuming that Oregon is going to handle their business, and they're great at like trucking bad teams. Like War of Words with Okie State, they flipped the switch against Oregon State. But I think you have the better coach, maybe not the better program runner of a elite. It's hard to run a program like Oregon when you have Phil Knightlert. That takes a different skill than being Indiana and having your chest out and being the underdog all the time. I mean, it's just a different personality. So I think they both are the great fits for their particular programs. But I think Zignetti being like, I think he's a coach's son. I mean, he was on the staff of Bama. Like he's been around. I think these two were on the same staff, if I'm not mistaken, when Lanning was a GA or something like that. But either way, I want the 7.5. Obviously, I would have loved the 10 from Sunday, but I think Indiana's a live dog here. Obviously, famous last words going into Autzen and all that. The speed of Oregon is there, but I think IU, they know what they're doing, man, and Mendoza's going to be just fine. I think it's a lot of points, and I'll take them.
All right. You're getting me closer to where I wanted to go. My gut wants to be right with you on Indiana, but gosh, I'm just uneasy about it. Let's go back to Troy here. Troy, any notes you can share on Indiana, Oregon?
Yeah, the public is split on this. 53% of the spread money is on the Hoosiers, 68% of the spread tickets on the Ducks. Oregon's won 18 straight at home. But I think if you think it's going to be a close game, I think there is a little bit of juice on Indiana to win outright. I do think the coaching advantage goes to Cignetti, even though his program hasn't been in as many big games. He hasn't had to squeak out as much. But Lanning has made some questionable calls late in games. But to Doug's point about Oregon is capable of beating up on kind of the lesser teams. Oregon's covered the spread in 4 of its last 5 games against ranked opponents, and Indiana has failed to cover the spread in 2 of its last 3 against ranked opponents. I think the location plays a huge role in this, but I think this is going to be a track meet. It's 55 is the total. 80% of the money and 75% of the tickets are on the over. 4 of Oregon's last 5 games against ranked opponents have gone over the total points line, and 11 of Indiana's last 12 road games against conference opponents have gone over the total points line. I know this isn't the DeAnthony Thomas teams of Oregon lore with guys who are competing in the 100-meter dash at the NCAA championships, but they still have incredible speed. In Indiana, they just want to run. They love getting up and down the field. I still have memories of the game against Nebraska last year where they kept running up 40 points. It was incredible. That's really when I started to learn about just the style that Cignetti wanted to play. This is a real test. They haven't been in a lot of real tests. Certainly the Illinois game was, and they passed that with flying colors. But I think this is going to be a shootout because even if Indiana gets down 7-0, they're not taking their foot off the gas. I think this is going to be incredibly high scoring, and the public seems to be headed in that direction, even with the 55 number that is, on the higher side. I'm kind of expecting it to be 57 or even 59.5.
Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. Some trends that would back up the over as well here that you mentioned, Troy. So worth noting as we continue to look closer at this game. I think you guys have talked me into a lean on the over and Indiana. I'm going to do some more digging before the second episode of the show this week and see if I add it to the card. There's one more game in this conference that we skipped over at the front of the show, but let's go back to it because it's a standalone game on Friday night here. Rutgers at Washington. The Huskies, 10.5-point favorites, total at 59.5. Do you like anything here, Doug?
I keep going back and forth with this Huskies team. I've expressed concern with them and Jed Fish and all that, and we saw it against Ohio State. But I was impressed. 3 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter, comeback win on the road against Maryland, Damon Williams. That was a growing up moment for this team. And now they get a Rutgers team that beat them in Piscataway last year. I think it's a really good opportunity for Washington to flex its muscles. Now, that's what the point spread's for. 10.5 feels like a lot. But this Rutgers defense is not very good at all. Iowa carved it up. Now, I know Iowa's special teams played a big role in how many points they scored, but still, the offense of the Hawkeyes did their damage as well. If Washington performed okay, they should be able to cover this, even if it's a sleepy start. I mean, look, you got a Friday night, tough environment. Shano have the guys ready. I just don't know how good they are, and I just don't know what their defense can do against these things. I wonder if Washington's sort of coming of age, if you will, or on the incline in terms of their season, and maybe they would play Ohio State better if they faced each other in a few weeks. So maybe Washington had a breakthrough game last week. I can't lay it, but I can't take it either. It's probably going to go over, but that's a big number. So I'm gonna pass on this game for now.
The fear for me that keeps me away from Washington right now is just the logistics of this game for the Huskies. Now, remember, they were out east against Maryland last week, a game that was one of the more confusing results of the Big Ten season for me. Not that 24-20 was a confusing final score, but stylistically, Washington was down 20-0. They stormed back 24 points in the fourth and win that game, a game that they were getting thoroughly outplayed for 3 quarters in. I have no idea what to make of this Washington team. Now, you follow that game up with a short week, back home, across the country, and then looking ahead, they go to Michigan next on the list here. It's a little bit scary for me spot-wise, that it's kind of like a sleepwalky opponent in Rutgers on a Friday that we should handle, but we only had one less day of practice than we normally would, and there's big-time opponents coming up. So I don't know. It's a sleepwalky spot. That's not an X's and O's reason not to take Washington. I think you're right. If they play their A game, they should roll. But the spot is spooky for me, and for that reason, it's a stay away until we get to Friday, of course, and I decide that I need to bet the standalone game, which typically happens. All right, let's wrap today's show with our early week best bet. Doug, what are you liking as your favorite play here on Wednesday before week 7?
So I like the Hoosiers the most, but I don't think there's any need to bet this. I don't think this touches 7. I think it can only go back up. Maybe we see more line movement. I'm completely wrong, but I can't see this going 7 or below. Maybe it just settles at 7, but I don't see a reason to bet that. But I do think the Michigan USC game can move. I would take the Trojans based on the concept of locking in lines and things like that. That makes the most sense to me. So the USC Trojans -2.5.
All right, we are going to have the same answer then. It's USC -2.5 is my favorite play of the early week. Doug and I are aligned. That is always a good feeling. I mentioned it a bunch throughout the episode, but there's another episode of this show coming to you on Friday. We'll give you our full cards for week 7, and we'll go even more into detail with every single game in this conference. Thank you for watching. As always, we appreciate it. We've been having fun doing the 10 twice a week for you Big Ten fans all season long. Reminder that we are part of College Sports Rush. Sports Better's Paradise with Jimmy Ott is another great show on our network. You're going to want to check it out every single week. Don't miss out on the College Football Squares promotion that we mentioned earlier in the show. Make sure you take advantage. For Troy, for Doug, for our entire team behind the scenes, thank you for watching. We'll see you again on Friday.